We all set? Yep. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's a special meeting called by council as part of our charter duties to finish the budget process. It is now council's budget, so this will be a meeting run by council. Beth, do you want to take the roll call?
Sure. Mayor Rutherford?
Here.
Council Canales?
Here.
Council Kelly?
Here.
Council Gibbs?
Here.
Councilor Talon?
Is here. There she
Counselor-
is. Yep, she's walking in right now.
Council Bob? Here. Council North?
Here.
Okay, so I sent out an email to the council earlier this week asking if they would approve of me to chair this meeting. Is that the consensus of the council, that you are okay with me chairing the meeting? Councilor Moore, what do you say?
Yep.
Councilor Bob?
Yes.
Councilor Talon?
Yes.
I say yes,
Yes.
and Councilor Canales, okay. So,
Just to clarify, just for the charter, the mayor is the presiding officer of the meeting. But because it is the council budget at this point, I think it's just a technicality to make that distinction, and then you can hand it over to the council whoever counselor is going to be leading that work session. Just want to make that clarification.
okay. So item 1 on the agenda is persons addressing council on the budget work session. Are there any members of the public who would like to address council on the budget? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Is there anyone on Zoom? Do we do that?
No.
Okay.
It's live stream.
Okay. So everyone has received the list of proposed budget adjustments. My suggestion would be that we go through the items, have our discussion. Council have the opportunity to comment, and then I would like for us to make decisions item by item if these are items that we can fully agree on. Dean, if I'm understanding this correctly, if we can come to an agreement on items, we can ask the Chamberlain to clean up our budget. This is what we did last year. If we can't come to consensus on items, then they have to be individual resolutions that the council would then vote on individually to finalize the budget. Okay, so item number 1.
Just one
Oh, go ahead.
question, Council Gibbs. So these would be at a future meeting, and if we end up putting it up for resolution, we would do that at a regular meeting?
Yes, that's how it has to be done.
Probably not next meeting, which is tomorrow.
Not tomorrow. I don't see how that would be
So the
possible.
straw, there'd be a straw poll on each item. Each item would then be, we'd go back to the proposed budget, make the changes based on the agreement on the straw poll. And then present the, only of those items that the council could agree upon in the straw poll.
Yeah.
Make the changes per that item, represent the budget, based on what was agreed to, then the council can then go from there. For those items that aren't agreed to in a straw poll, I guess, how would you like to handle that? Just kind of,
Those would go up as individual
One-off?
resolutions.
okay,
Yeah,
Yeah, that-
and then the council would vote. And then if it passes, then it becomes another budget adjustment. If it does not, then it stays as is. Dean, am I getting that correct?
That makes sense to me, but I was obviously Rick, the one that had to put it all together, so as much, I think there's some coordination with his office to make sure he has sufficient time to put those adjustments into a final work session.
well, the concern that I may have and the council may have is that this should certainly be voted on before that second week in January, ideally the next regular meeting of the common council, which is on the 16th.
Right.
The finance committee meeting is on the 9th. And so if we could work together on making sure that whatever's agreed upon by council is included in that budget, it could be presented on the 9th, discussed further. And if there's any further adjustments based on this list, then we can review them. A suggestion, a question.
Yes, I
Okay.
like that.
So item number 1 is pay increases will be as per the approved management agreement with no discretionary add-ons, cost of living adjustment payments. So I did not realize until we had our until our finalized actually it was before the finalized, we received the information that there was raises and pay increases placed in the budget, but the management package that is enshrined in the employee handbook has language in there for what those pay increases will be. Anything beyond that or any pay raises at all have to come to council for an individual approval. So it would have to be, as it is currently in there, would have to be taken out because it's just improper procedure. And if it is the mayor's wish to put before the council pay raises or anything beyond what's in that employee handbook, that has to be done by resolution. Dean, do you agree with that?
The manager or the employee handbook does have a level 3 manager compensation protocol or process. That was developed by a resolution in 2018 or 2019. It excludes essentially the public safety department, so it covers every other manager. That can be changed by subsequent resolution, and that quote unquote resolution could be done through the budget or it could be done as a one-off. So I don't know if there's a distinction between doing it through, accepted the mayor's proposed budget and approved it, that would be by resolution.
Okay, well, I would like to see those put up to council, if it's still the mayor's wish to put that through. I would like to see those as individual resolutions, not as the whole budget. So I'm not saying absolutely no, I'm saying that it shouldn't be folded into the budget. I think it should be individual resolutions.
So the funding for the increases are in the budget. So is the assumption that the funding for the increases in the budget and the approval of those funded increases in the budget also equates to the council approved increases? Does that make sense?
No,
So the funding for those increases are in the budget. That's separate from saying, okay, we're gonna now do these increases for this camp, for the management. Does that make sense? Because I can't, like, if you say, okay, if Chris Rosenquist, department head, I shouldn't use myself as an example because I can't give myself a raise. But if I say department head X, I want that person to have a 2% increase, COLA increase based on, the work that they've been doing. They haven't gotten a raise in 2 years or whatever. So 2% increase, which is in the budget. That's one instance. But then I would have to say by council approval, I need to now update that person's pay salary. Separate, but it has to be budgeted.
but only after council approval. So if it's your desire to, I think the employee handbook stipulates anywhere from 0.5% to 1.5%. Richard stated that there is a 2% raise budgeted in the budget. That's
And this is something that I provided the council when it was asked, hey, what are all the staffing changes for next year? I provided a 12 page spreadsheet that allocated every single department where staffing is going to be increased and added to, including indications where there was an increase outside of the step range, but more of a 2% or something above that, which I,
due to the duties that individuals were doing.
based on additional
COLA,
duties,
everything else.
or based on they haven't gotten an increase in the last 2 years or so, or they hadn't gotten that regular annual step increase. So it was bringing them up a little bit quicker along that pay scale.
Well, I can just say from having been involved in this, the bump ups were originally intended, and I think Council Kelly and Council Gibbs can remember this, it was intended to be for, these bump ups were for people who were stepped out. It was not intended to be across the board. That law was developed.
So what I'm saying is,
sorry.
I would like to see that come to us as individual resolutions rather.
The whole point, if they won't come to us as individual resolutions if we don't allocate the funds for it now. If we don't allocate the funds,
That's kind of my point.
if we don't allocate the funds, there's going to be no reason for us to even have this as an individual resolution, because then, okay, we approve, hey, Joe Schmo, you're going to be level 3 now. but then where are we gonna get the funds from? We can't pull it from the general fund.
Well,
So
the
we're gonna
budget
get,
isn't finalized
You see
yet,
what I'm
so that can be adjusted.
but why adjust if it's already gonna be in the budget? That's why we're getting ahead of it by saying, hey, these
No.
funds are gonna be in the budget. If we, whether we award it the 2022 or not, is not the point.
Ahead of yourselves.
It's we allocate it.
What Councilor Gibbs is saying is that if it's approved, we can add it into the budget. The budget is not final yet. It's not a final document. It doesn't have to be in there until it's a done deal.
So what you're proposing is that we have these resolutions per individual employee that's gonna get a step raise. In between now and January 15th, make those resolutions, then add it and finalize it, is what
So
you're requesting.
if the proposal from the mayor is that everybody gets a 2% raise, then that's a single resolution. If the proposal from the mayor is that there is a particular person who should get a particular raise, that's a separate resolution. That's what I'm saying. So those need to be approved by council. They should be, and then presented to us. We make that decision because I think there's, I think there are two things. I think that there is pay raises for particular people, and I also think there are 2% raises across the board. So if the mayor would like to present a resolution that says, I would like council approval to give every manager in the city a 2% raise, that comes before council, because that's outside
Yep,
of the
That's right.
employee
And that's
handbook.
accurate, and that's accurate.
Right, so that has to be approved by us before it can be budgeted. We don't budget and then approve. So that's what I'm saying. If there's a particular manager that the mayor would like to give a particular raise to, I don't know if that's the case, then that also comes to us for resolution before it goes into the budget. That's what I'm saying.
I think my concern would be is if I come to council in 2022 and say, hey, I want this person to get a 2% raise, where's that money coming from? Because it's built right now into the budget as a budgetary, like, as considered as a budgetary item. It does need to come back to council and say, hey, I want this, I'd like to have this person have a 2% increase, but then it then comes back to where's that money coming from, because it's not been budgeted. Which is why it was budgeted in the proposed budget, with the anticipation of having those folks, or at least asking for those folks to get that increase.
Okay, well, I think I don't, I don't know how much more clear I can make it. There needs to be a resolution brought to the council. If-
That's clear, I'm not
Yeah,
arguing.
so
I'm not
that's what I
arguing
would
about
like to
that.
see.
The question is, if we're saying take this out.
Yeah.
We're saying take this out,
Mhm.
bring it back to council in 2022 after this budget's been approved.
No, I'm saying take that out and put it before us now.
Understood,
That's what I'm saying.
that was my.
So that's what I was getting to.
Yes,
Okay,
so
cool.
we will vote on that separately, not as the whole budget. That's gotta come out. That's
So
what
it's
I'm
gonna be
saying. Now,
individual,
That makes more sense.
yeah.
yes,
That makes more sense.
that's what I want to see. Does everyone agree on that?
Yes, I got a question, a future question. I thought that with the mayor's budget, being the document that we're working with, any changes to it now has to be budget resolutions. So if we do budget resolutions for all of these things to remove them all, then turn around and put budget resolutions back together to put them all back in. You know,
Well, we didn't do it that way
There
last
would only
year.
be one resolution.
Yeah, that's where we did it last year.
So this would be like a combined resolution that says, take all this stuff out.
Could be.
No, they have to be dealt with individually. You're
So I'm
correct.
just thinking about taking the stuff all out, take it together for another meeting, and then have to put it all back in based on resolutions later. Just gonna eat up a lot of time.
No, this one in particular, I think needs to be done the way I suggested, because we have an employee handbook and a resolution that was passed before Jeff and I came on the council, and then it was enshrined into the handbook that allocates how level 3 managers are compensated. This particular one, number one on the agenda, has to be handled differently. And I would like to see it done the way that I just suggested.
Yep.
Now, that's its own thing. These other items that we're going to go through, if we come to consensus, let's say we come to consensus on 6 of these items, then we come to consensus on them. if we decide that there are 6 other items that we're gonna put up for individual resolution, then that would be individual resolution. So we're asking to basically follow the same process we did last year, where there was one large resolution that cleaned up the budget, and we voted on that January, what was your first meeting? Whatever that
7th or
was.
something like that.
That's not what happened last year. We did 4 or 5 different mayor's budgets last year, but I don't know if they were resolved, adopted, with, resolutions presented.
Well, the way
My
that,
understanding that, to take stuff out at this point, resolutions have to be put forward and then voted on to reduce or change the budget and put stuff back in the same way.
That's not what we did last
that's
year.
not my, okay, my understanding is
I'm
that,
not saying it isn't what we did last year, right? We did something totally different last
I
year.
think the problem last year was the former mayor presenting successive budgets after he had presented his initial budget, and that created some confusion.
Maybe.
Yep,
I think there was 4 or 5 versions
because the.
yes,
mayor's
that's
budget-
true,
in the final tally.
that's true.
The mayor's budget wasn't approved or adopted at all, like as a proposed budget.
No.
Right, it was just like so the mayor's budget is a proposal, it's not adopted by the council, it's not ratified in any sense. So
Well, no, there is a holistic budget that is approved.
no, after this process,
Yeah.
talking about the mayor's proposed budget. The mayor's proposed budget is a proposal. These are changes to that proposal.
Correct.
And if the council agrees to the changes to the proposal, those changes are then made, and then the budget's adopted.
Correct.
As Councilor Gibbs said, if we go through and there's a straw poll, it's like, okay, well, this one needs to come out. It sounds like the council would like those increases to come out based on the 2% increase. So those increases will then need to come out. We'll need to go back and do that now. And then on the 9th, we come back and say, okay, based on everything that everybody straw poll agreed on, this is the changed proposed budget, or this is the changed council budget that you then ratify. Vote on for the next, like the 16th, I think. But then, as Councilor Gibbs noted, anything that there is no consensus on needs to kind of be voted on individually, even perhaps after the main budget with all of the accepted changes are then voted on the 16th. We'll take a step back there, but I think that makes it a lot more clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Okay. So we agree on on what we want to do with number 1.
Just to clarify one fact, number 1, so I believe if my memory serves, the 2008 employee handbook describes the range of raises. Was it 0, 1.5, or 0.5 to 1.5?
I think it's 0.5 to 1. I don't have it in front of me, but I think
So
it's,
we say all pay increases, are you gonna, because originally some directions what you want, or apparently some directions you want, but do you want to remove the 2, but then what do you put in place, 0.5 or 1.5, do you put a number?
I think it was between 0 and 1.5.
Was it 0? Okay, I can't recall that. Okay.
But that, but
But do you put the floor in, or is this a max of that thing?
well, you don't, because what I think what Councilor Gibbs, you can correct me if I'm wrong, what Councilor Gibbs is saying, it should all be removed because it's above that threshold as
yes,
required by council. Now, if we go back and say, okay, we're not gonna do 2%, we're gonna do 1.5, which is well within the means of the budget, then what?
And you have it back in.
Then we take out the 2%, or we take out the 0.5% for everybody that had 2%, and then does that mean that it's then approved by council or what?
What's the resolution adopted?
Mayor, we should go back and read the handbook, but I think those increases out of steps and longevity were only for those who had stepped out. So we ought to verify that. But I believe that was the way that was written.
Okay, okay. What we'll do is we'll just take it out for now, okay? And then we'll come back. I think what I'll have to do is, because I do, like, to be quite frank, I want to get people raises, like, I think it's fair. So I think what we'll end up doing is taking it out, giving you, hey, this is the budget for this, with everything taken out, and this is the budget within the handbook or in the guidelines of the handbook, whether as a step or as a 1.5% increase.
Well, but it's incorrect to say that people won't be getting raises. Those who are, still in the steps
Mhm.
will be getting their step increases. And those, I don't know how the longevity works, but
Understood,
most
but
of
that-
us will be getting, and sometimes that amount ends up being 4 to 6%.
Sure, no,
So-
exactly, but that has to go back into how the budget, how the payroll part of this is calculated.
So it's not like any people aren't getting raises, they are. You're just adding an additional raise. And the council has guidelines for that.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, are we clear on that? Thank you. Okay. All right, number 2, no promotions included in the budget should be considered individually for council approval or disapproval.
Will this be with the exception of public safety?
Yes, the public safety resolution is completely different. And for. Yeah. Yes, of course it
Yeah,
would
that was
be, because
enacted
we,
more recently, and it should be in everybody's memory, at least all the older councilors. I think you were very involved in that, Council Gibbs, police and fire management.
Mhm.
There's a role on that also.
yeah,
That's, yeah. Which is separate. It's separate.
so are there any particular promotions in this language that you have in mind, Jeff? Because the public safety promotion, the chief of police position has to be filled, and we already know that process is in the works. And then that's mandatory, that we have to have chief of police. But is there anything other than that mind on this one?
No, it's
Okay.
just if there were any to be considered, we should.
Which they would have to, anything that's promotion inside or outside of union and to management, inside to manage departments always comes before council for approval.
And it has been, I'm not quite sure the difference here, because say like, for example, we had a promotion in CDO this year, and it had to come through council,
Right.
so I'm not quite sure what this is addressing, if this is addressing something specifically.
Any other discussion on that?
Just a question, promotions means title change?
Mhm.
Are you asking?
Yeah.
Jeff,
Yes,
is that what you had in mind?
yes.
So any changes in title are included.
Well, does that include union folks? Because that's not,
No.
No.
How much of that is an overreach in between what we're supposed to do and what HR is supposed to do, Dean? I'm being honest. I legitimately don't want to me to say that no promotions will be added into the budget or included in the budget.
Let me read to you from the charter.
Sure.
We'll clear this up for you. C3-8. This is duties of the council to establish salary schedules, fringe benefits, and all officers and employees of the city. So I think that's included. That's one of our duties,
Mhm.
which includes me.
To establish a salary. So
give the next guy, or the next woman.
Okay, is there any further
So
discussion?
you
on
want no promotions included, you want no promotions budgeted, you want no promotions budgeted.
that? Unless they've been
Unless
approved by
approved
council.
by the council.
Right.
Okay.
Is that clear to everybody here? Amy, are you still?
I don't. I understand to establish the salaries, salary schedules, fringe benefits of all officers and employees of the city. However, again, vernacular matters, and Dean, again, please help me with this, because I'm looking at this from the HR perspective right now. And promotion and salary, while they're tied together, are two separate things. So in the budget that you propose, Mayor, are there promotions included in that budget?
I think there are 2 promotions, one out of the sewer funds and one in the general fund.
Okay.
But I don't think there's not a promotion without a change in salary or that.
There's not a promotion without a change in salary. There's both promotions, or both, there's one actual title change in promotion, there's one each salary increase.
Correct. So that's going back to what Richard said too. My
Okay.
mindset with promotions is title.
Title change.
It's a title change, not a salary change. Correct.
Yeah.
I'm tracking this.
Same thing from a HR standpoint.
Correct.
A promotion to civil service means a change in title.
It's a duty change
Change
in
in
title.
job,
Yeah.
position, description.
And out of management, it has to come to council anyway.
Correct.
Yes,
So I don't know what hairs we're trying to split on this one. The other, I mean, that's, I guess. The other question is, and almost certain those folks who will deserve a pay increase because their workload is increased or their
Absolutely.
title needs to change or they need to get promoted. I would hate to see that the council says, well, it's not budgeted. When in fact, I'm trying to make sure that we do provide a budget that can support that kind of increase and that kind of promotion. And if we're taking it out,
Then where are we
and
gonna get
we
the
say,
money?
hey, we'd like to give this person a promotion. And it's like, well, it's not budgeted. Well, it kind of puts me and the management team in a little bit of a pickle.
Well, not really, because hopefully we're gonna wrap this all up in a couple of weeks and we'll have till first of the year to straighten it out. I mean, if it's added into the budget, it's in there. If it's not, it's not.
Well,
It's
if
pretty
it's,
simple.
it would need to be added into the budget before y'all approve it, right?
Yes,
So-
and that's, we plan on, these things should all be put to bed next meeting. We should be ready to roll.
Okay.
yeah, not tomorrow, but the last council meeting of the year, December 16th. I'm hoping we can have this all wrapped up.
Should be. I'm hoping to do that.
I hope so.
Plus,
Yeah, I prefer those things being wrapped up before the end of the year, so there's nothing hanging over Christmas vacation. I'm actually hoping that tonight we can agree on this and move forward. That would be really great. That's my goal here. So do we have a clarification then, or are we clear about what number 2 is and isn't doing here?
I'm clear.
It seems
I think-
like it was already being.
Yeah, any proposed title changes have to come out.
Say that again?
Any proposed title changes have to come out.
Yeah.
And that position has to go back to the previous title in the mayor's budget,
Correct.
revised for salary changes.
Okay. And a resolution introduced,
Later to consider it for.
well, it would have to be introduced on the 16th then.
Right.
Because then it's like, okay, we approve that, and then the budget would then need to be adjusted to reflect that.
Yeah, just takes it out and then that would put it back up.
yeah, maybe-
Unless we want to have another council meeting,
That's it.
unless we want to have another council meeting. I mean, I know we have a finance meeting on the 9th. It's not,
We have a finance meeting. Look, after this, my goal is to just work with Rich and department heads to make the changes that you're requesting present. Not only the resolution to approve that budget, but then the resolutions to make some whatever structural changes in the management team that need to be made.
so the other thing we could do is after the December 16th meeting, we can call another meeting. We can call another council meeting just for the purposes of the budget ratification.
Yeah, and I don't know
We
if
can
that's,
do that.
we can. I don't know if that's gonna be necessary, considering that it needs to be adopted 2 weeks into the month, the 7th.
It's supposed to be by the
January
14th.
So I don't like it, but we have time after the holiday too. It doesn't force a government shutdown if we don't have a valid budget by the first, which I quite honestly don't. I'll go on a little soapbox on the budget timeline. Having a budget approved after the fiscal year makes 0 sense to me, but
Yeah.
God bless the charter commission.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment here on that. You know, this is my 11th municipal budget, not all here. But, you know, I found that if you don't hold your feet to the fire, I've been to so many unnecessary budget meetings in the course of being involved in these things. I think the mayor is correct, that, you know, we should hold our feet to the fire, let's get the thing done, let's have it done by the middle of next month. And make sure that Counselor Bach gets her Christmas present. All of the Christmas presents that we'll put to bed and stuff. It's the more you allow yourself to stretch it out, the more meetings you're gonna have, and then you're gonna have something else to resolve. I mean, you really should just, I think we're that close. I really don't think we should extend it any longer than we need to. And the mayor is correct, we should be able to do it. We really should do it before the first of the year. Again, it's after the fact, after January first.
Yeah.
So that's, we're better than that.
Okay. All right, number 3, the police department shall consist of no more than 42 sworn officers unless approved by the council, which is just a statement to reinforce what's already being done. We hired 10 people in anticipation that there would be some retirement. So we're above 42 right now. Sworn officers, we're at 47. Okay, so the anticipation is that we will have 5 or 6 retirements next year, and that will bring us down to 42. So it's all.
Counselor Gibbs, I was wondering, does that include detectives, lieutenants,
Yes.
sergeants, and
Yes.
everyone,
The
every
only-
sworn?
When we
officer?
say sworn, well, I'm talking, and maybe you could. Sworn officers are the officers who are sworn to uphold the law, but you do have other people who are civilians employed inside the department.
So 42 includes every sworn officer, detectives, lieutenants, sergeants.
Chief of police,
Patrol.
Chief.
lieutenants,
Bags and a gun.
Yes, yes, sir.
So, and then how many civilian employees do we have then on top of the 42? Three. Are they the 3 dispatchers?
I'm sorry, they're not sworn, so you're accurate. So there's 6, so it's 3 dispatchers and then 2 support management staff and 1 is parking out of our budget.
Pardon. Oh, okay.
Parking for next year, or you're talking about this year?
I was just answering the question, how many civilians do we have?
Yeah, but parking is not in your budget right now. In 21, it will be in 22.
Correct.
So we have 48 employees in the police department. Is that a correct statement?
48? No,
There's
50.
because of
50.
the cross guards too, correct? Do they?
They're not, well, they're in our budget. There's 7 of those. Individuals.
are those budget neutral? There's a reimbursement by the school district for those? I can't remember.
No,
Not for
No.
the crossing guards. Only for the youth safety act.
Youth safety. But we have to by law provide those. The crossing guards. Yeah, we have to by law. 'Cause we went through this last year, discussion, discussing this at length, and by law, we have to provide them.
What was the lowest number that we came to in sworn officers this year?
37.
37. Yeah, you might be surprised to know that's the average. According to the FBI, that's the average for cities our size. 38 actually. And I just wonder, was there a crime wave or something that forced us to hire more people, or? You know, was there some?
This would be succession and a time that takes to train an officer. So by the time we train an officer, we anticipate an academy. There's only regional anticipation. And then once the academy comes up, we have to hire, do background investigation of vet, potential employee, again, place that employee into an academy, which is approximately 5 months. And there's field training and on the job training. And it just takes time to get there. So if we talk about succession and planning, we have to do that implementation first.
Yeah.
If we wait, the next big wave is in 2024, we lose 7 more. So as we spoke in prior meetings, this 10 will be of concern in 20 years because we didn't replace as these years went on.
Right.
We did replace slowly. Becomes an issue for the council at 6 to 12 years from now.
Okay, so to be clear, in the 2022 budget, it's not bumping us up again.
No, it's not. No, and I think that might have been there might have been some confusion around the timing of introducing the proposed budget, which said we're gonna add 10 more into 22. There had already been 7 budgeted this year, and then council approved the additional 3, which essentially took up the 10 that we had budgeted for next year.
Right, I
So-
think that was the source of confusion, for myself included.
Yeah, no, and it made sense because we introduced the budget and then we did the hiring. But the budget was still kind of out there like, hey, we're gonna hire 10 people in 22, which we had already done.
And that was mainly because of the academy started.
Yes, yes.
One thing that I would, 42, so right now, how many officers are on staff right now, including cadets? 38, 48,
47.
47, right? So with 5 people potentially leaving next year,
They're not utilized, but then get the academy.
right, so so it takes a year for a cadet to become an officer independent of any other service, right? So 6 months in the academy, 6 months field training, and then they're finally put on the street alone. I mean, like they're on the street field
What's the
training.
guidance for this?
Right, they're on the street field training, but that also is taking up another officer at the same time. So when you lose those 5, you also have an additional group of field training officers assigned to cadets that are on the street. So I guess my concern about limiting to 42 is what's the number based on? Is it based on an actual science or an actual real world independent analysis of what we need? And if you're talking about 42 just from the general fund, I'd rather see it explicitly outlined 42 paid by the general fund, because if we say like we find a grant that is going to bring officers in long-term or offset the expense of having those hires, or paid for by another agency that is in partnership with us, I would rather see us say, limit the general fund expenditure for hiring these people. That's the concern, rather than saying, okay, we're just gonna hire 42 people and that's it.
I think we get into a danger there when we start trying to limit what the positions are gonna be in a proposal.
Well, that's covered.
That's completely.
That's covered by, it can be approved by the council, and we've done this in past years, so
Right.
it's not a hard to do or unusual situation.
Right, okay, so I think number 3, we're all set. It was just a statement of affirmation of the staffing level. It doesn't affect the budget. We're not asking, nope,
Action on number.
no action for the budget. It was just a statement.
I do have one more question before we
Yes.
go on. It's hard to know, like when you see a payroll number, how many people is that and who are they and what are their titles? You don't really know. So,
We got that. We got
Councilor
that.
Kelly, I did send a
It's an
spreadsheet
email.
yeah,
last night, and then I sent one when Councilor Moore asked for a breakdown of
Position.
those expenses for the 22 budget, which included all of the payroll for each department,
Break down to
the
give every individual.
COLA increases, the vacancies,
so my question is very simple, and that is, I see $3.27 million for payroll for the police department. Is that enough to pay 42 sworn officers and 8 civilians? Or do we need more, or do we need less?
Nope, that is the number that we calculated, and got to show our hand here. It also included the 1.5% increase that we had planned on paying for the negotiated salary.
That's right.
So it does include every body as in physical body that we had planned on funding in 22 budget in PD.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the budget pays for anticipated raise in their salary when the contract is settled.
Correct.
Correct.
And so, I said this to the other counselors, this is exactly the reason why it is so important to settle contracts. Because it becomes huge sticker shock when we have to pay all
Look,
at once, which you're working on, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I thank you for that. And we can, it is a challenge for the city and the mothers and fathers of the city to look at a bill after 7 years of not paying a contract and saying, where the hell are we gonna get this money? Right? So when we looked at this budget, we certainly had some understanding that we were going to need to pay that back type, as well as include that increase, what we anticipated to be an increase of 1.5% into next year's budget for this unit. As well as the negotiated contract that we just completed with ASME. So, thank you.
And so the separation pay is also, increasing for the police department because of the anticipated retirements.
Correct.
So,
And that too has been budgeted.
yep, absolutely.
I can answer Councilor Kelly's question to breakdown of the sworn officer. It's 7 detectives, 8 supervisors, That's a sergeant and a corporal, that's the 21 patrol officers, 2 managers, and 10.
And
10 new,
in
10 new
new
recruits.
recruits, okay.
if that helps.
It does, I appreciate that, I've always wondered about that. Are the 2 managers your 2 lieutenants? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so number 4 on this list, police car purchase is to be taken from the police budget and not bonded. That was something that Jeff and I and Mike and I have also talked about. Jeff, why don't you explain that more in depth?
Yeah, I don't even know if this is factual, but I had heard that we were gonna borrow the money from police cars. They don't last 10 years, so I don't know why we would bond them. We never done that in the past, if indeed that is the case. I'm not sure on that one, but I heard that through the grapevine, don't know if that's true.
We had both put the monies into the budget, as well as said, if we needed more flexibility with the budget, we'd take it out. Talk to our bonding agent to say, hey, is this a good idea or not? It's up in the air about it. I don't think you can speak to it. He's like, you could, you don't have to, you could, one way or the other, it does have to get paid for. Now, the useful life of a vehicle or an asset, if you could stretch that out a little bit, it certainly helps, right? Like, if you can finance a stove over 5 years and you can afford it, then, that doesn't hurt you. No difference here, right? Now,
No, typically, we don't do that unless it's something that has a life of 10 years or more. I mean,
sure, and again,
I'm pretty sure those police cars don't work. We keep replacing them every year, which is part of the.
do we replace them because they keep getting smashed, or do we replace them because they are a little old?
Which is
Yeah,
well, that's exactly one of the reasons why it should be a bonded purchase. I mean, anything can happen to a car,
Sure.
and we don't want to continue to pay debt on a car that we don't have anymore or isn't running. So that is the spirit behind this, that bonded projects really should be for projects. I'm concerned that I don't want to see us accrue debt that's unnecessary. If the police department, I'm just using it as an example, the police department needs a vehicle, let's put it in the operations budget and budget for it.
Sure.
I don't
Okay,
want to see
that's
those things
cool.
bonded,
And again,
because I don't think that's,
So you'd rather it be budgeted than for us to go.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, cool. So
Yeah,
you're
so,
okay
like-
with adding more money to the police budget to make this happen?
if they need,
if they
if
need,
they need it
Yeah.
for vehicles, which I'm sure
just
they
doesn't
will,
make sense to bond it.
it just makes more sense.
10 years.
Bonding is better for things like bridges and roads.
Well,
So we have
we
a
do-
lot of roads to take care of. I'd much rather see us
Yeah.
do it towards that.
we do bond other assets like that, vehicles and other machinery, we bond things like that. And again, this is also at the, under the advice and counsel of our bonding agent, as we start to work through some of the bonding, policies that my recommendation that we do develop something around bonding, a bonding policy. But I'm fine with taking it out, it's really up to the council. We can certainly increase I think there are a number of vehicle purchases included in this year's budget that were moved off. And again, this was something Councilor Kelly and I spoke about specific to building inspector's office. To ease the budget a little bit and extend the life of our dollars, ease the impact of our dollars by bonding something like that over a couple of years.
I'm not in favor of bonding an asset that may only last 5 years if you're lucky. That
Okay.
just doesn't make sense.
Well, I'm just regurgitating what a conversation you and I had about Joe's budget.
I remember that conversation.
Okay, item number 5, which again is not a budget, it's an item that's going to affect the budget. It's merely a statement on the part of the council. That we have stood firm that 36 is the firefighter number for the department, which is what is budgeted. Any comments on that, or can we? It's not an actionable item because it's already budgeted for 36.
So the payroll number is for 36, payroll.
The payroll is for 36, and it's
Okay.
also for a full-time assistant chief, which I've advocated for, in addition to the chief. So the chief can have a second set of hands to help him do all all the things that have to be done. 36 individuals is too much to manage with 2 firehouses and 1 manager. And it has been for a while. So,
Can't disagree with
all
that.
right, and we have consensus on that. So has a test been ordered or what is there
Test for what?
for the assistant full-time chief?
No, it's not budgeted. I don't know how do we order a test? Again, this goes right back to what we previously
Yeah, it's
said.
in the budget.
Sorry?
It's in, is it
It's
not
in
in the
what
budget?
budget?
In the 2022 budget?
Yeah,
Chief?
but it's not, that budget's not.
No, I
approved.
know, but okay, so you're waiting for it to be approved and then you're gonna call for the
Yes.
test. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you. Okay, number 6 is a small adjustment to the overtime. Overtime budget for police and fire, well, it doesn't. Well, 200 doesn't remain as an exact, because last year for PD, it was 150. And I think that PD is requesting 200, which I'm okay with. And I would like to see the OT for the fire department come down to 250. I know it was budgeted for 3, but I would like to see that come down to 250. That's what it was. With a second set of hands in that department, I'm certain it's gonna get managed better. Everyone okay with that?
Chief, how many people you have going possibly to go into training next year? New firefighters? 3? How's that gonna help overall with mitigating the overtime that we're seeing right now?
They will be on shift until July. So it's 6 months.
So we won't see a big deficit or a decrease until around July. then.
What's that?
We won't see a decrease in that overtime until around July, then, essentially, or a little thereafter.
Not for the other shifts.
Okay.
To give you a little insight, and this is also in the proposed budget, 5-year average of payroll and overtime payroll in the fire department is $340,000. As we saw this year, budgeted at 250. It's what, that 400 something. I understand there's a significant amount of retirements, unexpected retirements this year, which didn't help that. We are hoping that the addition of an assistant chief will help some of that. I think we got to kind of play that one by year. But, pushing that down to, what did you say, 200, 250?
250.
I mean, it's a gamble, it's a gamble. I'd rather see us kind of shoot higher and then really bust our hump to control that cost rather than this admittedly frustrating situation of having to come back and say, oh, we gotta bump that, we gotta increase that, we gotta increase this again. So, that's the reason why we kind of split the baby on that one. 250 from last year, 340 on average. We kind of came in the middle somewhere to be more reasonable rather than going back to a 5-year average.
Well, I guess my opinion on that is I don't want to give up on that. We really need to get that overtime down and under control. And I think it's kind of throwing in the towel to say, well, we'll just make it bigger. We still need to control that.
Well,
I agree. I think $250,000 is a lot of money for overtime. I understand the burdens that the fire department faces. I do. Every year, it's been a struggle. I'm confident with extra management in there that the chief and then another manager can get it under control. I have asked for, and I continue to ask for, an operations plan. There has to be an operations plan in place. $250,000 is a lot of money in overtime. And I can't relent on increasing that. I would much rather see a department work within the money that is allotted for it. And come up with a plan on how to make that work, which has never happened for as long as I've been here. And
How
that's
many
happened.
people are projected for 2023 to get trained?
2023.
Mhm. How many?
One retirement.
One retirement, and how many are you looking to add on? Talent acquisition, just one.
we only
Because we're
backfill
staying-
one-
we're
one-
staying
we
deadlocked
only
at
backfill
36.
one full one in the fire department, in the police department as well. Again, the reality of it is if your electric bill on average is $500, just putting a $250 budget on it next year is not going to reduce that electric bill.
No.
You're going to try as hard as you possibly can. And like I said, that's our goal and that's our job, is to make sure that we're responsible in managing those expenses, but the reality of it is, y'all can change it, but the reality of it is, it's on average, it's been $344,000, and this year ain't gonna help that average, but to go up.
Well, the way you cut overtime is you hire more people. You hire more people so that you have less overtime. That's what you do.
I mean,
I don't know how else to explain
That's
that.
that certainly is one solution. You know, with the amount of overtime that we've had to spend in that department and encroaching in PD a little bit, I mean, PD is a lot more manageable, but even with the number of people we've been down in PD, I don't know, they have a different approach to that, but you know, I again, change it if you like, just to be clear, it's on average, it's been much higher than 250. And this year, like I said, hasn't helped. But again, this year we have had a significant amount of unexpected passions.
I don't feel comfortable dropping this from 300,000.
I have a suggestion
Yes.
that will accomplish the same dollar figures, but just go at it a little bit differently. It looks like the police department this year is going to come in at 150, and in 2020 they came in at 202. So could we possibly be safe in assuming that the police department, being fully staffed, can get by on 150, just like they're doing this year?
Well, they're not, though. You're
Not
over budget.
necessarily.
No.
We're over budget on, that's what was anticipated, but
Well,
I
it
don't
says
have
the
the-
2021 projection's 150.
Oh,
That's
that
what I'm going on
was budgeted at the time, Counselor Kelly, that was the budget at the time of delivery.
Oh,
The
they've
actual-
already spent 152 and the year's not over.
they've spent, well,
Okay,
well.
okay, forget it. I take it back.
And that's because of staffing.
Well, I'm confident that Councilor Gibbs is gonna be correct, and with this assistant chief, we're gonna make some inroads there in the overtime. Let's see what happens.
I agree. You know, I work within a household budget and I don't increase my credit line so that I can spend more. I realize it might be slightly oversimplistic, but this is taxpayer money. This isn't my money. And I feel very reluctant to increase it beyond 250. But it needs to work within the amount of money that we can afford. That's where I stand.
When earlier in this year, when we were asked to approve I think a $500,000 increase in overtime, it made me angry, and I said, well, maybe we ought to just write them a blank check. So if you don't set some kind of limit, then it is like writing a blank check, and we can't afford that. We couldn't afford the 500,000 this year. It hadn't been budgeted.
Came from general fund.
Came from the general fund. So I think you got to shoot for something. And 250 sounds like a pretty good number to me. That's 2% of the tax rate. So, we're asking taxpayers to raise their taxes to and change to pay for that, and that's just not right.
Chief, how likely is it for some of you guys to get injured on the job? Why? Because it's laborers, right? Imminent danger, hazardous duty, correct? So what happens if one of those guys get hurt?
I have to cause the shift strength down and vacations and other scheduled time off.
So then it goes into what?
Overtime.
Okay, so we can't project how many people are gonna get hurt next year. That's the comfortability that I'm at that $300,000, because we cannot project. There's a lot of different things. I'm looking at this at a number wise, but can we please be intimate with the person as well when we're doing these budgets? Yes, we have taxpayers, but these guys are taxpayers too. And if I'm looking at it from a legitimate humanity standpoint, if we do not, if you look at the last 5 years, like the mayor said, we've been consistently at, what was it, 345-ish K average. If we dip under that, we have no idea what is likely to happen. You have fatigue regarding low manpower and high stress, all these different things. We're in a post-pandemic world right now. There's just a lot of different things that are playing into all of this that we need to be very intimate with as we discuss this in particular, because we're talking about the charter and everything. What's the first thing that we as the council are supposed to provide? Public safety. And we're in the season right now where there's going to be, unfortunately, fires and everything else. So I personally, I'm going out right now to say that I am completely against dropping this under what the mayor has already proposed.
All right, well, we're not going to come to consensus on that one. So we're going to move on to number 7. Number 7 states no laborers added to CDO or rec complex, tasked to be moved to DPW. Jeff, you want to?
Yeah, it makes way more sense. DPW is set up with a supervisory structure that can handle people. They have the means to manage these people. It really doesn't make sense to have a little, we did this in the past, it proved to be very ineffective. People need to be managed by someone on a day-to-day basis, so we propose to move them to over to DPW. When DPW was doing the rec complex work, it was done very well in a timely fashion. So I find, I think that's the right place to put those people. We still need those people in action, and just be putting those people over DPW instead of.
I know, I'll talk to Mike and Matt and Andrew about it, because, we're putting Mike on the hook for managing these folks, or at the very least having these folks report to Mike. And historically, if you weren't here when rec complex or rec department was abolished, all of that work was moved to CDO office, which means all the park maintenance, the laborers that did work for rec were moved along with that book of business to CDO. That's been several years now, and the addition of adding those laborers to rec complex includes managing the fields, the ball fields, which is also managed under rec complex. Those ball fields are not, the ball fields and scheduling of the teams are not managed under DPW, it's managed under CDO. And those are the folks that we're talking about, the people that manage maintenance and cleanup at the beach, maintenance cleanup at the parks, preparing the ball fields, those kinds of tasks, which we have been, unfortunately, have fallen short this year. I guess we've been able to piece things together enough, but it's been a struggle considering that the hiring of those folks has been hit or miss. Let me talk to the team, and if they don't storm out of my office, maybe I can work something out with them. But yeah, look, I would say, look,
There's not enough bodies, period.
you got folks here that are the ones that you're saying, no, stop doing what we're doing and move them over here, as if it's not that simple, I would say. Could it be something that could work out? Yes, but let's involve them, because we're the ones that are saying we're gonna completely upend their book of business for what we think needs to happen, right? Let's talk to the experts and get their opinions about this.
Is there language in the charter that changed, Dean? When the rec department was eliminated, was this charter language that determined that CDO would take on rec complex?
We did a coaching, there was.
Was a code change?
I know we did a local law, so the department. I'd have to look at the content of that law to make a specific answer. So I don't believe that was a charter. I could be mistaken on that.
So let me just explain where I'm coming from on this. The community development office really should be dedicated to the development of the community, should be handling the grants, revolving loan fund, projects to be brought into the city, the actual community development component, and to ask the CDO to manage rec complex seems to be too much for that office to handle. I don't think that's appropriate, and I don't think it's an appropriate allocation of responsibilities for that office. Public Works has an internal management structure, and Jeff had already said that, not just superintendent of Public Works, not just Andrew Dern, but has the individuals to manage them, to be out daily, to be out as necessary. It doesn't make any sense to me at all to put rec complex workers under the responsibility of our community director. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I understand what you're saying, that Superintendent Bissett and Mr. Dern need to have this conversation, but it just does not make any sense to me. And that's the reason why I support this.
I think I don't know how it works in the public sector, but in the private sector, it would make perfect sense to put these positions together so that you could say to that laborer, well, you're all done in the park today. So great job. Now let's go tackle this sewer issue over here. So
Doesn't work.
I would think, well, you don't know that it doesn't work,
I
okay?
do. Because you
Until we
mentioned
try
private
it,
sector, and I am
you can't
private
really
sector.
say it doesn't work
I know
until
it
we
doesn't.
try it. So the thing I would like to see is I would like to see the CDO rec complex laborers work out of DPW where there is a management structure, where there are people there. And I'd like to give it a try at least. It may, it may work. I think it would actually. But
Mr. Brissette, you got something to say?
Well, first of all, CDO doesn't have any liquor. Okay, right now, it's nothing. You guys see it, better than now.
Yeah.
It's plain and simple, they have nothing. So they've been living by with my employees. And I know the mayor can attest to this, that I get repeated calls about parks being in shambles, facilities not being up to snuff. We've given all we can give. There's nothing more to give. As far as supervisory, let's look at 7, 8, 9 here. Might as well get right into the meat of it here. When you abolish the recreation department, when you abolish engineering, when you abolish HR, no one designated where this went. Dean just said that. You just pick up the pieces and run. We're dying a slow death here. Okay, I think that I haven't heard any complaints about what I'm doing.
Doing fantastic.
Okay, we'll give the old college try here, guys, but if we can't, it's gonna, can't give you guys what you want. So if we're not gonna hire the laborers to CEO, whether you go clean or not, whether you don't fill positions in public works, things will stop getting done.
you're going to hire 2 laborers for
The 2
DPW.
laborers, first of all, the 2 laborers we had hired, one was already budgeted in 2021. I cannot get a candidate. So then we asked for an MEO 1 position and a public works maintenance 1 position for the 2022 budget. So I didn't ask for 2 laborers, I asked for really a public works maintenance 1 and an MEO 1. The 2 laborers for the CD part. I still have a vacancy as a labor position.
Do you plan to fill it?
I'm trying.
So what's holding back the filling of the position? Mike?
What's holding back is getting people to show up. So I advertised, I got 5 applications. We called repeatedly. 1 gentleman showed up, was not even qualified for a labor position, in my opinion, unreliable. And that's it. And we've done this, I think, 3 times this summer. I can't fill the basic position.
I can attest to that because we've had the same problems hiring laborers for recreation complex. We've had 3 people not show up for interviews and 1 person walk off the job in the middle of the shift after we had.
And let's get to the crux of this though. So you keep saying that Give it to public works, so get it done. Sure, I can get it done. It's not hard. Cleaning toilets, raking the beach. It's the sum of the tasks. There's not enough there. There's not enough managers, there's not enough bodies to do it. To give you what you want. It's plain and simple.
And the management of personnel and the maintenance responsibilities that DPW would be assuming here is one thing, but it's the administrative task on top of all that. The admin work involved in getting the beach prep and hiring the personnel is an enormous task every spring. We got pretty good at it over the past few years, but to move that over to DPW as well, they don't have the admin staff for it. And all the leagues and the thousands of participants that play baseball and football and soccer on the city's fields every summer, all that has to be managed and field times booked. So it's beyond the personnel and the maintenance responsibilities. There's a
And
enormous amount of
and
admin.
it doesn't even get into the actual job specs of what we have for people managing each other. Whether it's the manager himself, which is me, an engineering technician, who is not a manager of, numbers. He can manage small groups, okay? We're talking about, I know in the past they abolished, or they got rid of, he's probably not best, Mike Brody ended up having to assume the duties of a recreation supervisor. or
That didn't
superintendent.
go well.
It did not go well.
That was too much for Mike. That was way too
I
much.
will say this, the conversation that we're having as a council is the same conversation I've had with Mike and Matt. In the sense of, let's be frank, it doesn't make sense to me is why is CDO managing laborers and the rec complex when, again, it is the same book of business that laborers might do at DPW. And we went back and forth with this. Now, there is some work in the budget, in CEO's budget, that pays DPW to come and do some of this work, cleanup and maintenance, but when it comes to the day-to-day cleanup, maintain the bathrooms, fix the parks, fix the beach, sweep up, shovel up the parks, things like that, it made the most sense for right now to leave it in CDO until we can find a better structure to manage that in the future.
So Mike.
I agree with you, Counselor Gibbs. I would much rather see Matt out getting grants, out creating opportunity for development and economic development and not have to manage the recreation side of it. But when rec complex was abolished as a department, it just so happened to fall in that department because it made the most sense at the time. And we're still trying to work out operationally where it might fit in the future.
I
So
just
can
I can't
ask a
picture,
question?
somebody from CEO office having to hop in a pickup truck and go down and look and make sure that the lines are put on the baseball field or.
We do it. That's Skippy's job. That's been Skippy's job.
Well, that's, I feel it should be removed. Matt, you need to, your office needs to be dedicated to what the office is dedicated for, and I don't think it's right that rec complex responsibilities lie with you.
I'll be frank, I don't think it's the best use of my time, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that if I'm not doing it, somebody else has to, and I'm reluctant to dump that all on my colleagues.
I get that. So maybe I'd like to have this conversation then, and I'm not in your committee anymore. I liked being in the public
You
works,
know,
but
the rest of
hang
it-
on, Jeff, let me just finish. So Mike, Bissett, your ask or one of the proposals we have here is an MEO and 2 laborers. You're saying you can't,
That's incorrect.
no, that's what
No,
this
I'm
on
just
here.
telling you that what's on that sheet, what I asked for,
No.
that's not correct.
No, what Jeff has on here. That's what
Well,
I'm saying.
whoever put it on,
Okay.
that's not what I asked.
Okay, so,
I asked for 1 MEO 1 and 1 public works 1. And then we also have an existing labor's title that has not been filled for 2021, so that's
Still in your budget?
Still active. And not reposted.
so you're asking for 1 MEO 1, 1 public works 1,
And 1 labor.
additional to the empty.
No,
To carry over.
go down to
Carry
the
over.
8. Instead of 2 laborers, basically you're gonna have 1 labor and 1 public works 1. That's what we're asking for 2022.
Okay, so if these were provided, which I'm sure they will,
If they were provided, they would make public works whole as a public works department, not as a recreation department.
okay. Now, the proposal here of moving rec complex employees under your responsibility,
Okay,
okay? what would you need in order for that model to be successful? Would the proposal of employees that you just said to me, a Public Works one laborer and one, and is it NEO one? Is that what you called it?
Mobile equipment operator.
No, I know what it stands for. I thought there was a number after it, NEO one.
Motor equipment operator.
Okay, so with that and with rec complex employees moving over, what would you need in order to be successful in that?
There are two different classes of employees, but what typically you have is operating the beach and to take care of the parks or laborers, okay? So, and Jeff is correct. Laborers running around randomly without supervision or inspection, but what Matt has currently structured, you have a recreation leader, right, Matt?
Recreation leader and seasonal labor, those are
And
the
seasonal labor. And what we also did after the big purge, we brought back the field maintenance worker. That person is currently out on disability. So the field maintenance worker that does take care of the strike. So you have the field maintenance worker, ideally, and recreation leader. You would have 2 laborers, and most likely you have to have some oversight by at least a maintenance supervisor.
So can I ask you a question then? The police department has given us in the Public Safety Committee basically a structural chart, an organizational chart, so that we can see who goes where and what they do. Would you be able to provide a similar kind of proposal of I need this number of people with this title to do snow and removal?
It already exists.
Okay.
I can give it to you tomorrow with everyone's name and phone number on it.
I don't need name and phone number.
No, it's on there. I don't need to reprint the document.
And then-
And you can see the vacancies on it. Now, if you're asking me to create one for recreation, I don't have that, because I don't do recreation.
And also,
Hired as the superintendent of public works, not the superintendent of recreation.
and also that structure has been provided to council. That was part of that whole package of that spreadsheet that I sent.
But I have it broken down there even more. I have it by title.
Yep.
I have it by, all the way down the line. It's a sheet, it's a Bible that we go by because we call people out. It's current and it actually even shows the vacancy because the protocol is very.
But what I'm saying is that's the same sheet that was provided. It shows the individual person, their title, and the percentage of the time that they work. Snow and ice, refuse, parks, recreation, water admin, sewer supply, the whole thing. Like that is in that spreadsheet that was provided. And it breaks it down by percentage of where they work, how much they're paid, the vacancies in that department.
I think it makes really good sense to have the rec complex workers work out of DPW. And I understand Michael has his reservations about that, and I appreciate those reservations. So let's give him what he needs to make it happen. It just doesn't make sense to have your laborers working out of the rec or out of the CDO. They're supposed to be collecting grant funds and managing grants and managing projects throughout the city. And they do that, of course, well, but I just think it's a better fit to have those people working DPW.
If that's the case, this would be my recommendation, and Matt and Mike, you guys can chime in on this. It would be to maintain an assistant superintendent, move the rec leader or rec person over underneath that title, and then that they could manage parks and recreation. But then we're gonna have to ensure that he has an engineering assistant. Can't go without that, right? So if we really are looking at making a shift of all the rec, because also I think it's important for us to understand that it's not just maintaining parks and striping lines. There's people that have to call leagues and take fuel, we manage the Wilcox dock, we've got to manage those relationships, and we've got to schedule ball fields and soccer fields and football fields, blah, 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 blah. That's also part of the rec piece. That is certainly not even part of DPW, right? Like,
Well, most places do that with, actually, all the other places in the county do it with the youth commission, like the teams and whatnot. YMCA manages a lot of teams like that. it's not a big deal.
No, I don't say that, but we're also talking with the town of Plattsburgh to help us with some of that recreation stuff, and the town of Plattsburgh has their own staff that does it. Not a youth commission, they've got their own youth commission, but they also have a full-time staff that manages that. So to say like all these other places do it with a volunteer board or a youth commission or a YMCA, you know, we're trying to work that out with the town right now to figure out what that partnership looks like. And maybe there's some flexibility in there, but you know,
The other issue we have. Go on and on, and it's because we start blending departments. The labor class titles are gonna have issues with seniority and who's working where. Okay, typically what would happen is if we change shifts, for instance, during the summertime, they do split shifts, I believe, at the beach. The laborers will work and make sure you have maximum coverage. We have a tremendous problem blending rec laborers, whether they be new ones or existing ones, which is no existing ones, with the current one they have. So we're gonna be taking guys off the garbage trucks and they're gonna be forced into positions they're not familiar with, that's perfectly fine if they wanna work here. But it's gonna, it'll be a hardship on public works, I guarantee it. It will not be smooth.
Well, I'd like to see 7 and 8 included on the list that we pass on to the mayor to work on. So let's see what we can do. I know last year, you know, there were lots and lots of complaints about the bathrooms at the parks and the beach, and there were just a number of challenges. And I don't blame anybody for that. I'm just saying that's a fact. That's what happened.
you mean last year's in 2020 or last year's this year?
Well, both actually.
Oh, I was gonna have to clarify.
I had heard a lot of
Yeah,
complaints
we all
this
have.
year.
We all have.
Little league parents saying that, you know, they couldn't go to the bathroom at the ball
So
field,
they gotta use a porta potty at Fox Hill, you
yeah,
know.
which is nasty. But so we have an issue. We have an issue, and it's not a pleasant issue. We need to deal with it. So why not look at a different way of doing things? I don't see any harm in that. You know, just to write it off as, oh, no, we can't do that because we've never done it that way before.
Yeah,
That is not a good approach.
Mike Brody did it that way. I'm sure he would be more than happy. I could get him here really quick and he can explain the pitfalls of combining those departments and what he struggled with.
But we have to also remember that we had a full rec department back then. We had,
And even with the full rec department, because you know, Mike and I spent a lot of time together. And a lot of the time it was about institutional knowledge about things that worked and did not work in city of Plattsburgh. You respect the fact that he was the longest tenured employee here with the exception of Todd, and he knew a lot about everything.
yes,
And
he
I
did.
see Denise shaking her head yes here, and that was one of those experiments that went sideways. It did not work out well.
Well, we currently, we don't have a rec department. And
But we have recreation.
yes, and most of that is contracted out to now the Y and the people who run the
You say it's
marina.
contracted out, but they're
Great.
working on me every day.
Right.
I'm always over there.
And they're not doing the maintenance on the.
No, they're not.
Yeah,
doing
well,
that.
they're tenants.
They're doing.
They're
the
tenants.
bare
We're
minimum.
landlords.
You're getting three-quarters of it already.
Say that again, please.
They're making the program revenue that we abolished last year, and we still have the expenses.
Mhm.
Yeah, how much did we lose on the rec complex in 2019, Mr. Mark? Do you recall?
6,000 will surplus. 6,000 surplus.
I remember we transferred $700,000 from the general fund to
640.
the rec complex, 640.
Yeah.
Okay, so we transferred 640 and we determined at that time, we can no longer afford to do this. And we decided at that point in time that we would,
Increase
would-
the revenues in 2020.
we would try to contract out the work and see how it worked. As far as I know, it's working pretty good. The Y is running the gym. The people are running the marina. And then the crate center is being run by Steve Peters, I think. So
we're transferring 289,000 from the general fund to the rec complex fund to compensate for the accumulated deficit. At the end of 2019, the accumulated deficit was 70,000. We had a 238,000 deficit just in 1 year in 2020.
Yeah.
That's because we scrapped all the revenue. We had $800,000 to $900,000 of revenue coming into the complex. We don't have.
Okay, well,
Well,
I don't,
Can I make a suggestion? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
what
a
if-
pretty broad topic we're getting into.
Yeah.
We could spend the rest of this evening and maybe a couple of reviews on this. So why don't we just move beyond that now? There appears to be, there's a lot of differences of opinion. That we need to look into it, some of these things a little bit.
so in terms of the items in number 8. First item is deleting the assistant superintendent. How does the council feel about that? I don't think we have consensus on that.
I don't agree.
Yeah.
I don't agree.
So I don't think we have, I do agree on MEO 1. And Mike, you said you asked for Public Works 1 employee. Right, that was what you asked for. You said MEO 1 and a
One
Public Works 1.
labor and then the
So where we
general.
have the assistant superintendent.
No, not this, we don't have consensus on the assistant superintendent.
So you're leaving it?
Well, we're just saying we don't have consensus on it, so we're not doing anything with it right now. But I am asking,
So, yeah, so one MEO, so it's actually not MEO one, I apologize, MEO.
Okay.
Straight MEO, more equipment operator, one, public works, maintenance one. And then labor wise, we already have, again, this is a position that exists, we should have 6 laborers, and we're only actually in the past 2. Labor class in public works is gonna go by the wayside, because no one wants to take that job. Like that. I mean, it's cool.
okay, so you're asking for MEO,
MEO.
Public Works 1,
And one labor.
and 1 laborer.
One
Okay.
labor in 2022. Now, if you jump up the line above, no laborers added to CDO. When Matt, the mayor, and myself sat down, we had agreed upon including 2 full-time laborers, not temporaries, seasonal temporaries, but for the parks and the facilities.
Mhm.
That was 2 full-time laborers for CDO rec complex, in addition to 2 seasonal laborers, all for 2022.
So I'd rather see those as part-time, seasonal part-time.
If you'll be hard pressed to solve.
Absolutely.
People don't want.
It's difficult.
The best, I can tell you right now, that I averaged 1 seasonal worker all year long, that was it. And one of the gentlemen, he's a retired corrections officer, I can't get kids to come over
No.
grass, I can't get kids to do any of that work,
It's tough.
does not happen.
Okay.
We're struggling mightily with it.
Mhm.
All right, so it doesn't look like we have consensus on the items in number 8. So let's move on to number 9.
Was that
Oh.
a change to be made?
No, I don't think so,
Okay.
because it looks like 7 and 8 is still discussion. 7, I don't think has a budget impact. I think it
Well,
was,
it would if you moved
that's true.
the labor from the rec complex, there were 2 full-time and 2 seasonal, moved them over to DPW. So it would just be a move of the funds from one fund to another. That's how that would work.
Right, okay. So do we have consensus on that?
Which one?
About
Number-
moving the
number
rec
7.
complex workers over to Public Works? Do we have consensus on that?
Rec complex worker
Yeah.
as a budget or as a,
It only moves them from one line to another, right?
put
It
it
only
into
moves
your
them from
budget?
one line to another. Is that
It
correct?
moves them from one fund, the rec complex fund, to the general.
It doesn't decrease the budget or increase the budget, it just moves it.
Not overall, no, just a change, but general fund would go up, rec complex would go down, and also that would change the contribution from general fund to rec complex to compensate.
Okay.
So basically, it's a wash, but it's just a matter of where to locate the position for the budget for next year.
Okay, so do we have a consensus on that movement? I know where you stand, you say yes.
No,
Caitlin, you say?
No.
We don't have, okay, we don't have a consensus, so no action
Let
then
me,
on.
let me work it out.
Well, I think there needs to be more further conversation, for sure.
Okay.
But number 8 has a more significant budgetary impact, but we don't have consensus in council. So we'll have to figure out if we're gonna take any resolution action on that. Number nine,
I just say that I see a problem if they can't get people to do part-time work, they're not gonna be able to get them in any department. And that's another problem that we need to look into. Because Mike is telling us he can't get part-time summer help.
That's correct.
So-
I'm gonna have two
so-
people leaving here very shortly.
So-
So I'm gonna be hard pressed to even backfill those.
So it's a problem no matter where you put that, where these
So,
people
yeah, so
are.
I feel the pressure you want for the rest of the rec work on top of me, I'm confident.
And just to be clear, it's.
Well, no, wherever we put it. I don't want to continue on this too long.
Yeah.
I'm hearing we can't get people to do it anywhere, so.
Well, it's
That's-
hard to, even young kids spending the summer laboring, that's back-breaking work.
Yeah.
And if you're only gonna do it seasonally and not get, a real strong benefit out of doing it in terms of like maybe a part-time job or benefits or health or blah, 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 it's not very attractive. Go to, I would much rather work at Burger King for 15 hours.
They can
rather
get
than-
paid $6.50 a week sitting on their ass.
We should contract that out then.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
anyways, moving on. I'm
So
sorry.
the moving on, number
I don't know if
nine.
the union would appreciate that one, but.
Number nine, the proposal is to eliminate the project planner position. Let's take a consensus on that. Jeff?
Yep.
Yeah, Caitlin?
I'd like to hear more information.
Okay. Jennifer?
Yeah, I want to hear more information too.
Mike?
Yes.
To eliminate Jeff, sorry, Jamie?
This is regarding what
Yeah.
you
I'm sorry.
proposed to us, Mr. Ruff, correct? Okay, I want that position.
Well, you want it personally, you'd have to resign your position.
Let me restate, I want that included into the budget.
You just got reelected.
I am so much fun. That's a needed position.
So it goes back to, when we do talk about contracted services, I think we've spent upwards of maybe $400,000 to $500,000 having this type of role manage the number of construction and engineering, say, soft engineering work that we've needed to be done, that's needed to be done. Especially when we look at the future of Plattsburgh and the type of development that we want done. We are gonna need to have somebody that's technical in nature, that can manage these projects, that knows how to walk the walk, talk the talk when it comes to construction, design, engineering. We look at this not only as a in-house position that can be hands-on managing these things, but also as an opportunity to save some of these project costs that we incur by hiring out to a third party. These guys can talk project by project, how much this position's been needed, but this is, again, comes up because of structural organizational changes that have been made over the last several years, where work has kind of been cast and fallen into people's laps, and they're like, I don't have the expertise for it, it needs to get done, we can't drop the ball on it, so what are we gonna do? Kind of comes up in this form, if you will.
So has the position, the job description been written and brought to civil service yet?
The job description in general has been crafted. It's not gone to civil service. Taking a little different approach on this, finding the right kind of candidates. If this position is authorized, it's critical that we get the right person. The right person could come from a pretty broad variety of backgrounds and skill sets. Rather than work with civil service first, the plan was to craft the job description, get a candidate pool, have some discussions, and figure out what type of person's out there, and then write the description around the candidate pool that we know exists. Then send it to civil service and have them title the position. They may have an existing title they feel fits. They may decide they need to create a new title. We don't know. We don't want to pigeonhole ourselves right now and end up with a candidate pool that's really, really small. That's kind of a long answer to your question. The question was, did he go to civil service yet? The answer is no, but that's why.
I would be remiss not to remind you if you approve this.
Janice,
I know.
this is not
Support
public,
staff.
this is not public
Yeah, I know,
discussion at
support
this point.
staff.
It's hard enough to get these things straightened out amongst ourselves.
I know.
So do you anticipate the person you're looking for would be an expert in civil engineering and would be able to do all the things that we're doing contract services for? To do design and,
Not necessarily. We rewind the tape a little bit. 6 years ago, some of the major departments involved in infrastructure were engineering and planning, public works, community development, and in the rec department. And there were 8, if I got my numbers right, there were probably 8 people that led the management and led the charge there. Now we have 5 doing that same amount of work plus additional work. And in particular, when it comes to public works, they picked up one of the big initiatives is the milling and filling program that's pretty much transformed our roadway system throughout the city. That's been a big undertaking. So there's 5 people doing the work of 8 with more work to do. So what that means is the work that 8 people used to be doing got spread around. Public works in particular has picked up the lion's share of the crisis level things and work that was done by others who aren't here anymore, and doing a great job at it. But we've now had 4 or 5 years to kind of figure out how we're going to do more with less and all that. And the ability to provide service is showing some stress. There is work that's just been contracted out. The road designs that the engineering department used to do, well, just hire it out and we pay whatever we've paid over the last 4 or 5 years to have that done. Whatever construction inspections the engineering and planning department were doing, that's being contracted out. And Rich could probably put numbers on that. But there's also work that's being deferred or not being done, and some of that's important. We've had a couple of presentations on it. I don't know that all the council's been at any of those, but there's things like the pedestrian bridge inspections. Who's supposed to make sure that that stuff gets done?
who would normally do that? Or
What's that?
who did do that in past? A city engineer?
These are the.
Now,
Right.
a lot of them, we don't have one, so.
No, but I mean, if you're talking about a project planner, but the person is going to be doing the job of a city engineer, then aren't you looking for a city engineer?
Civil service may decide that's the title. We're not gonna know until we find the person, the candidate pool, see where that background is. Maybe it is civil engineering. It might be science. It might be people who have done a lot of project management that aren't maybe as technically experienced as an engineer, but can handle the program elements that are the critical part. A road design like Cogan Avenue. City engineer is not going to design that project in-house. It's too big. They're not going to do the construction inspection in-house. It's too big. But somebody's got to hire the design engineer, go through the procurement process, rate the candidates, decide on who should be hired, negotiate a budget, bring it to the council, get it approved, have pre-design meetings, get the design going, making sure the design's on track, the bills are paid. You've heard Matt and Mike talk about the administrative load of this work. It's huge, whether it's a construction project or a grant. The administrative load is critical and it's a big demand. Public Works has picked up a lot of that, and the work they're doing is great. But there's other stuff now that is critical that they can't get to as often as they'd like, in my opinion. And forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn. They did a better job this year of flushing the water distribution system, okay? That really didn't happen for 3 years. Maybe on a limited basis, but not like it should be. What did we have last year? Early in the year, we had taste and odor issues throughout the whole city because the distribution system wasn't flushed. Not saying that was 100% of the cost, but it definitely contributed to it.
So how would a project planner help alleviate that kind of burden? Are you saying it would take the burden
Project planner would
from,
run Cogan Avenue project.
excuse me?
So, For instance, Cogan Avenue.
Yeah.
Andrew and I spent, how many hours a day at Cogan Avenue?
Most of the day.
Yeah, so both of us together, both in the field, in the office, on Zoom calls with the consulting engineer, working through punch list items. It takes a team of people to do these things. I think Denise was trying to talk about administrative people to go along with it. You know, an engineering department or any sort of planning or project management department, or whatever you want to call it, label whatever you want, is not, one person doesn't make a department. We talked about, recreation, same deal. One person doesn't make a recreation department, one person doesn't make public works, okay? But Andrew and I, like I said, we spent a good portion of our day, we got the chief in the morning out at the beach to look at a safety issue. But then the rest of our day was spent on looking after it and then getting ready for tonight.
So if this person were hired, you're calling it, excuse me, you're calling it a project planner, but you don't really know what civil service would call it.
Actually, we're calling it a technical support program manager. We're covering a lot of bases. It'd be a position that's got a little bit, in an ideal world, ability to provide some technical support to every department across the city. But it also this person would have the ability to manage projects and programs for every department across the city. So it could be a person from a wide variety of backgrounds that could have, between their education and their experience over the years, be able to do this job. Denise can tell how many projects went through the engineering?
So
All right, sorry.
Okay, this proposed person, what department would this person report to? It would be, is this a management position?
I'd expect it to be a management position.
And who would be responsible for this person? Who would they be?
That's something we would still need to work out.
And
So
that
the
would go through
question
civil
is-
service, yes?
What's that?
That would also be determined by, or would have to somehow get, yes, it would, it goes through civil service.
So you have to
Yeah.
be determined by civil service, but the reporting could be determined at the city level.
Yeah, and ultimately it goes directly to the mayor.
Well, of course, you're all,
When
but
when you have those titles, like my direct supervisor is not John Ruff, it's not Richard Marks, it's mayor, okay? When you do, Andrew's direct supervisor is me. John's is the mayor, correct? That is on those civil, and you're familiar with it because you're an educator. But yeah. The mayor also can take responsibility, correct me if I'm wrong, Dean, but the mayor takes responsibility.
But we're not looking to
Just-
create a whole new department.
no, I get that part, but it just seems that the way that I'm hearing it sounds like it's an engineer. Sounds like that's really what you're looking for, that kind of experience and that kind of expertise. Also, the expectation of doing a tremendous amount of work for one individual.
I'm doing it right now.
You're doing it right now.
At the expense of other work that she can do.
That's right, at the expense of other work that he could be doing.
I'm just looking at this, I don't think this is well enough defined for us to be proceeding with, we're bringing somebody in. There's too many blanks here for me to be confident that this is, we're going in the right direction. I hear lots of different directions. We want somebody that's gonna be like this, want somebody that's gonna be like that. That's gonna be able to do engineering work. I don't know. I think we need to define this way better than where we're at right now. I'm
Well,
not
it's
saying
defined to
not
the
to
extent that we know there's gonna be a budgetary impact. So for now, the position's been parked in the sewer fund. You can see if you review the sewer fund budget, there's a net profit in the sewer fund. So there's money to support the position. It might be decided later on that the position should be partially funded from some other departments. But right now, the definition is, what's the money gonna be?
I
All this
hate,
other
I hate
stuff-
that when somebody says that it comes, it comes out of the sewer department, so it's free money. No, it's not. Some of the people who use the wastewater system pay for that. It's money coming out of the residents' pockets, my constituents, everyone else's constituents. So to say, oh, well, it comes out of the wastewater fund, so it's free money. No, it's not. I hate that. when somebody says that.
So what is the proposed salary in the budget?
In the budget, $80,000. We've identified a range of 60 to 85,000 as a possibility, depending on the applicant pool, how much experience people have and what they're making at their other jobs. My experience has been if we can hire somebody within the community who fits the bill of what we're looking for, we typically can hire at a pretty competitive salary. If we have to bring somebody in from outside the area, my experience has been we have to pay more than if we're hiring somebody local. So we don't know where that's gonna be.
Okay.
So we've got this range. 60 to
Does that range include fringe benefits, John?
85.
So you add in the fringe benefits, that's another
40,000.
40,000. So 100,000 at the low end and 115 at the high end. So that's a lot of money. And then there's, when you hire someone, you've got the OPEB to think about. $600,000 we got to pay for that person eventually.
You're talking about long-term.
Long-term retirement and all that
Yeah.
stuff,
If they come in
healthcare.
under managed, once somebody retires, that
Yeah.
doesn't affect the city anymore.
There's no long.
For retirement, if they come in as a level 3 manager, they lose their health insurance when they retire, once they're 65. They're not-
Okay,
They're covered by that.
so that's,
So, post-retirement healthcare.
Mayor Reed had a problem on his hands when he took over in 2017, and he eliminated the engineering department as well as some others. And he didn't do that in a void. I want everyone to understand that. He looked at other cities like ours, similar size across the state, and found out that engineering departments are rare. That's why he was able to, yes, it is true, and I'd be happy to show you the data.
So.
Okay, I think that it's important for us to stay on task so we don't
But
erupt into
I
argument.
am trying to make a point here, and that is that all these steps were made to stabilize our finances. And gradually, slowly but surely, I see attempts over time being made to now add to expenses. A lot of what we see on this sheet tonight are jobs. And we just can't afford them. I know today, we got a lot of cash and everything, but going forward, this is the very same thing that got us into trouble back then. And you guys know we don't want to go back there. That was a miserable time for all of us. One of the hardest things I ever did was closing those 4 departments. And I do not want to do that again. And I do not want my successors to have to do that again. And that's really what this is all about. We can't repeat the past. We just can't.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna chime in that I hope that managers don't feel that we don't support you, or that we don't want you to be successful, or that we're trying to find ways to, cut things. I only speak for myself, I won't speak for other counselors. I see a lot of salary added into this budget that is going to, we don't really know what the economy is going to look like next year. Inflation is very, very high. We'd like to believe that inflation will come down next year. We don't know if it will. The cost of materials and supplies to do the things that, the mayor has plans of things that he would like to get done, so does the council. Those costs are going to be more expensive. The resources to pay for all those things, both salary and projects, are finite. We are not a city that has a tremendous income, a revenue stream coming in. We have a very specific set amount of income. We all know what those are. And I don't want managers to walk away feeling like, well, it's another budget session, council's not listening to us, that we can't do our jobs. We have to, as a council, we are tasked with being fiscally very conservative to make sure that the budgets are not creating situations. Jeff, Mike, and I were on the council last year when we had to make the decision about whether or not we were going to furlough, lay off, eliminate positions in the middle of a COVID crisis. It was terrible. I lost sleep over that. I lost sleep over the last budget session. I lose sleep. I slept a week because of this one. So I don't want the city or anybody to be in a position of having to make the decision to eliminate people that we just hired. We want to strike the balance to give you what you need so that you can be successful and the city is successful. And I just hope that you understand that that's the spirit behind the conversation. Not trying to point fingers and say, well, you should be doing this, or you should be doing that, or I do become concerned because I'm looking at management, lots of new employees, and I become concerned. That's the spirit behind the conversation. So before things, erupt into argument or it gets to a direction that we don't want it to go, I don't want that to happen. I just felt like that needs to be said. I want you guys to, and ladies, women managers, female managers here, I want you to feel supported. We are tasked with something difficult, which is to make sure that we do what we can afford and not put ourselves in a position next year where we say, well, guess what? AIM funding didn't come in like we thought, or this revenue wasn't what we thought, because sometimes that happens too. And now we've got to cut, and I don't want to be in that position. So I don't think we have a consensus on the project manager. Would that be correct? We don't. All right, so I think we should move on. I don't know where this will go next, and continue conversation I think is best. But we're not going to take any action on that. So let's move on. Item number 10, this is something that I feel strongly about hiring a deputy Chamberlain. It is enshrined in the charter. We don't really have a strong succession plan for the Chamberlain's office. And so I don't know how council feels about adding, that would be an addition. That's not in the budget right now. Richard, I know we did talk about this last year. It's another year later. We don't have a succession plan for your office, and I feel strongly that we have to.
You never asked me about a succession plan for my office. You don't think I have one?
No, I don't know if you have. If you,
Come down and, cover it.
I would,
I'll show you.
I'd love to.
So, and it's not in the budget, so you want it in the budget?
Well, it's enshrined in the charter, not that we may, but we shall have a deputy Chamberlain. And last year we had this discussion, and it was something we agreed we wouldn't have.
I actually had to go back to Councilor Kelly and clarify if it had been added. I thought it had been added into this year's budget, and reviewing it, I couldn't find it. We had talked about it in terms of going out for advertising. We're like, well, we can't because it's not budgeted, and confirmed with Councilor Kelly, because I think Councilor Kelly had advocated for that as well.
It wasn't budgeted in 2021.
Right.
Well, I guess, I just want to be clear, like, it says hire, but, there may be somebody in Richard's office that could assume that position right now.
Still have to hire it, still got a budget for it, so
We do.
it still needs funding. So if that's something I have no problem with it. We didn't add it into this one, but
I think we need to do it.
That's something that you're supposed to appoint, Mayor, that according to the charter. So
correct.
that's your
But,
appointment.
but again, it's one of those things where, my concern is I come to the council and say, I'd like to appoint this position, and it says, no, it's not budgeted.
Such a
And then
catch-22.
We're right back in square one here, right? So
It's the charter.
Bingo.
I agree.
So I think we have consensus on that.
Tell us what it costs, I guess, is the request for next meeting.
well, okay, sure.
I'm sorry.
Richard,
So-
what would you estimate this would cost for Deputy Chamberlain? Because you're the numbers guy, you do phenomenal at what you do, and I know that you have it at the top of your head and the tip of your tongue, so how much?
Probably roughly what we're talking about for the technical service. Same range.
Okay,
So about 80,000.
65, 70. Thank you.
40K.
60 to 85.
So roughly the same number John was giving.
Okay.
100.
Okay, so do we have consensus in council to add this to our budget? It's not budgeted. Do we have consensus? Jamie, do you agree?
Oh, let's add it.
Mike?
If we get some savings from some of these other things, yes.
I agree.
What was the caveat?
The only caveat is you're having two full-time high-paid management personnel to supervise 9 people.
And that was the discussion from last year.
So it doesn't make sense financially to do it. What makes sense is to say, okay, this person's being hired. And then- Because that makes sense financially. Doesn't make sense to spend that much money on 2 people to supervise 9 jobs.
Then we have to amend the charter. This presents the
Well,
issue.
see, the charter was probably written in 1902, when you had 2 people in the office. You had a Chamberlain and a deputy Chamberlain. So when Chamberlain's not there, the deputy can sign the checks and do whatever. I think it's just a matter of the charter not being up to date
Correct.
for a modern office management. So,
We have people who can sign checks and fill in for me right now. when I'm gone. So, but anyway,
Are any,
it makes sense financially to have one position. Managing finance.
so Richard, the people that you're referencing are those individuals that, I hope this doesn't sound indelicate, are any of those individuals people who could be appointed by the mayor to take your position in the event that you decide to retire?
You probably wouldn't get anybody interested in doing that because they become a level 3 manager. And currently they have better benefits because they're part of the game. The level 3 managers in the city, not to be delegate, are the lowest class individuals because we don't have the same benefits as people who work for us. There's level 1 managers created again by the change for the police and fire, because they have the same benefits as people who supervise. Plus, they get the same raise to stay ahead of them at the same rate of pay. We're talking about a 2% increase for the rest of the managers of the city. It amounts to $20,000 across all funds, $8,900 in the general fund. You're saying that that's a budget breaker. So,
No, it's not a budget breaker, it's just has to be done through the proper channels, that's all. Okay, So-
Council gives us, and I mean, this is out of the box thinking, but why couldn't we not pay anybody for that position and just say, designate somebody as the deputy chamberlain?
I like that.
And because we have a regular office there, right, Rich? I mean,
Yeah, I
you could
mean,
just designate somebody as like.
It's like the mayor pro tem, right?
sure.
Backup and
the title is the
not
issue.
pay anything?
Sure, do that. I mean, I have an accountant that works for me. That's the most capable person going. She never take over the deputy chairman because she wouldn't want to be in a management position like I am. She doesn't have the same benefits.
Well, that unfortunately speaks to somebody moving into a management position anyway, right? And enticing them to come out of the union, much like we had to, find an example sitting in the corner. Figuring out a package that makes sense. for
Well,
them to
so
be
you could work
protected.
around civil service or something like that to make it not the actual position, but just somebody that could fill in, say, I mean, somebody's gonna fill in, like if Richard was sick
Sure.
for a month or
They
something,
can right
someone
now.
would fill in right now and it would change the way that position is described, it would save us a whole heck of a lot of money,
Sure.
and
And that position is one of the succession planning things we'll go through tonight because I think she's got maybe a year and a half to 2 years left, so I gotta replace that position. I've got 6 positions that are going to be gone in 2 to 5 years. 6 out of 10, me included. So,
But deputy chamberlain is a civil service title,
yeah,
so
but you can work with them and change it if need be.
we can certainly change it. I think that if you're looking at adding a label as deputy, just as the label and not the actual position itself, we would have to work through something with that, but I don't. think
well,
that's-
yes, because you'd be looking at a
That
title.
would be the ideal way to do it, because I agree with Richard, it was probably something that was pretty important back in the day.
yeah,
It was
because there was
probably-
only 2 people in the office problem. But the point is, if you're gonna say someone's acting deputy chairman, you say, well, that's working out of title, working in a different class, they have paid it.
Well, I have worked with those people before, you can do a lot of things with those
Oh, yeah,
job descriptions, it can be, it was something we should look into.
Well, and we can also adjust the charter.
We can also adjust the
We
charter.
can adjust the charter, we could say an assistant chamberlain.
but we did have a test conducted for deputy chamberlain and there's not much interest in becoming the manager in the city of Plattsburgh. in the town. Nobody is interested. I've talked to several people that I thought would be great candidates to train to replace me. And I'm reluctant to go to work for the city.
So it's not just laborers, it's managers too that don't want to work for the city.
Yeah, there's one that I thought would be a great candidate. And he said, I couldn't risk going to work for the city because I never know what's going to happen to the management positions. Unfortunately, that's the reputation that they have outside here. So
All right, so, so item number 10 then, are we tabling this and not adding it into the budget then after further discussion? I think so, okay, all right.
Add it in.
Didn't know, we're tabled to, don't do any action on number 10. Number 11, 35-hour people remain at 35 hours. And I go back to my earlier statement about increases in payroll across the city and, you know, concerns about cost. I think 35-hour people should stay at 35 hours.
How many
There's 11 people out of all of the clerical staff that works in the city in the offices. You're saying that 11 should be different than the rest of the people doing the same work.
Do they have more work?
No,
Same amount. Less
they
time.
don't have more work, but their benefits were just changed, same level as the people who were working and getting paid for 8 hours a day. They lost a whole hour of sick leave a month, just like the 8-hour people, and nobody decided that that was a disparity. And it continues to create a disparity between individuals that say, well, I get paid for 8 hours a day to stay here the same amount of time that you guys only get paid for 7 hours. The 8-hour people don't work more time. They get paid for 1 more hour. They take a half-hour lunch. 7-hour people are forced to take an hour off at lunch. Their benefits were changed consistently with the 8-hour people and the contract change. So I just don't see why we would want to continue to have 11 people in a disparity situation. Maybe you take the other 40-hour people that are in clerical tasks and put them back to 35 so that the whole city is even. That would save a lot more money.
And we do get into this wonky, there's some customer facing offices that are open from 8 to 4:30. Some are open from 8 to 3:30, some are open 8 to 4, depending on the tasks of those offices. It'd be much nicer, I would imagine, to ensure that doing business with the city, you are certain that when you go in between 8 to 4:30, you're gonna be able to do your business with the city regardless of where your business is.
The point of suggesting this is coverage. Right now, our office has to close at 3 to eliminate working any overtime. So we can't provide that extra hour to customers again, like we did before the pandemic crisis, without making this change.
Okay.
There's a benefit to this. You're not just paying more money, you're getting more work out of people too. You're gonna get another half hour a day out of every person. So for my office, it's 22 and a half more hours a week. I'm gonna get out of them to work. That's gonna provide us with the ability to stay able to afford and get more done. That's good. So that's just something to consider.
So I'm trying to understand this, Richard, so the people that work 40 hours get a paid lunch, is that what you're saying? Or no?
Yes, they get a paid lunch, and the people who don't work 8 hours or get paid for 8 hours a day, they get a free, they get an unpaid lunch. So the 8-hour people have to work an extra half an hour, but they also get paid half hours. So it's just a very, I don't think we should have created it in the first place. Somebody came to the council a long time ago and said, well, you know, my guys work 8 hours a day, so my girls have. And I know that that's a nasty way to put it. I'm not trying to gender bash, but it's just the stupidity of that statement that happened. And everybody said, oh, yeah, we should do that. So that all of a sudden, all the departments in the city started, I gotta go with 8, I gotta go with 8, I gotta go with 8. So now we got 11 people left. I say fix it, and also we get half hour a day of work out of each individual.
We get calls at MOD about people trying to pay their electric bill, complaining about the office being closed from 3 to 4. And in fact, I think it was about 4 months ago, one customer even went so far as filing a complaint with the state of New York Public Service Commission about it. And I got the complaint because I'm the electric department, which I then pointed out to them. They don't run the finance department, but they said, well, something that should be done, that customers can make their payments and make whatever they have to do there.
Better you than me on the compliance.
Yeah, well, yeah, I love dealing with the PSC. They're real well.
Okay, do we have consensus on this? I don't think we do.
No.
No, we don't. Okay. So the proposal was that cost savings from all of this would be split between police contract settlement fund and IT improvement. So,
If there is a.
well. Okay. It is 6:15. So it sounds like we have consensus on, well, I think we understand what number one means. Number two, some of these are just statements of support. We don't have consensus on 6, 7, 8, 9. We removed 10 and 11. We don't have consensus. So there won't be much savings in this to split where we wanted it to. So.
Well, I would suggest that the ones that we didn't have consensus on, we should do resolutions and bring them to the meeting and vote on them. Either add them to the agenda or not, have a vote.
That's tomorrow, it's 6.
Correct. And we should
that'll
hold our
be-
feet to the fire. We need to wrap it up at that point. Like I said, if we-
And this will be inclusive of all the council, not
Yes,
just
if
3
it's-
councilors?
if it's
Okay,
not
cool.
unanimous, have one.
Well, one thing I would say is if any counselor has any idea to save money, that would be good. We know that we have a police settlement to pay. It's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know, the mayor's been talking about spreading it over a couple of years, and that helps with cash flow, of course, but it still has to be paid. So we're going to be in the hole at the end of the year. We have a budget that has a big goose egg at the end of the year, right? So any unexpected or unbudgeted expenses that happen during the year, we're going to pay for, and it's going to come out of the general fund. We're going to end up with a deficit. So anything we can do to put a little money in the general fund this year, or at least minimize the deficit, would be very good. We need to do it. We need to do it.
Okay, so I'm going to adjourn the meeting, 6:16. Thank you.
You need a roll call.
Do we need a roll call vote?
Yeah.
I'll need a roll call vote.
First,
Okay.
Okay, roll call?
Counselor Canal?
yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yeah.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Talon?
Yes.
Counselor Bob? Yes. Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Thank you.
Great.
Wow.